Close your eyes with me, start imagining a world full of love. We can change the stars with our hands and hearts, make them shine on us. But no, don't worry, darling, they won't stop staring, but soon they'll be caring. Come from near and far with their hands and hearts, 'cause it's time to stand up. Oh, the world is changing, and all I'm saying is we gotta believe. I'm a drop of water, but you know together we're the ocean deep.
All right. Dames and Herren, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, welcome to Light Horse Park here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Today we are going to be, on behalf of the Dutch Canadian Club Edmonton, unveiling our Anne Frank statue. The statue has significance for many communities, not only the Dutch, and we're so excited to be able to share this with everybody here today. As we start our ceremonies today, we were going to be raising the flags and the national anthems of both the Netherlands and Canada. All rise. And now the raising of the Canadian flag and O Canada. I'm counting on you guys. You do know the words to this one. At this time, we acknowledge that the land that we stand is situated on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. It is a welcoming place for all peoples who come from around the world to share Edmonton as a home. We thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries and whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. You may be seated. So today we've been waiting a couple years to do this. I want to sort of apologize in advance that might be a little bit longer than normal, but heck, isn't it great to be out? Excellent. And just so you know, we're here in Light Horse Park. I want you to mark the date October 2nd when the South Alberta Light Horse Regiment will be unveiling their park, but we're getting a sneak peek here today. And literally Friday afternoon at 12 noon, there was fences all around here. This garden was not as trimmed as it is today, and it's just an indication of how people get things done when there's a deadline. So you are the first group of people to celebrate here today, and I'm honored to be part of that. For those of you who are runners, tomorrow morning, the November Project will be here at 6 a.m. sharp. Watch that on Instagram. So today, August 8th. August 8th in 1944, Anne Frank and her family were put on a train from Amsterdam to Westerbork. And it just is by accident that this is the day that we are here to unveil this statue. So it's a little emotional for the Dutch, emotional for our Jewish community, and emotional for our military. As you know, Canada, or the Dutch, are ever indebted to the Canadians for what they did in liberating the Netherlands. And I got to see this year on May 4th and 5th when we were over at the Kipnis Center. There's still at the Kipnis Center 21 veterans, Canadian veterans, who served and who were in the Netherlands. And each year the Dutch community here continues to try and honor them. It's amazing. The Dutch never forget. So today we've got some dignitaries, you've all got a program, but there are some other people that have wanted to join us, and I want to acknowledge them here. First, the city is the way it is because people get involved and make things happen. Our former mayor, Stephen Mandel, is in the back. I was actually hoping Lynn was going to come because I was going to introduce Lynn Mandel and her husband, Stephen. Jeffrey Lindquist. Jeff is our new president of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, has got a big role. Jeffrey, thank you for taking time out of your family. And you've got heavy shoes to fill and lots of work to do as we come out of this. I see another gentleman is busy going to be running for a job here in Edmonton, Amarjeet Sohi. Amarjeet, thank you for doing what you do. Saul Rollinger. Saul, and many people know him. And Saul is here as the colonel with the, help me, Saul? Military police, and his colonel. So thank you. I think I've got everybody that's sort of appeared here, and we've got some dignitaries that are going to be speaking here today. Beside me here is Mr. Frank Stolk, and Frank is the president of the Nederlands Dutch-Canadian Club here in Edmonton, a huge volunteer and has worked tirelessly with me on this project. So my name, John Stobie, husband of Avery Stobie, and father to Spencer and Fia. Spencer's here, Fia's in Victoria having some fun on her way back. I want to thank Avery for letting me do these kind of things because without the support of our families, we wouldn't be able to do this. So Avery, I know you're behind the cenotaph there. I thank you for always letting me get involved in these projects. This project certainly has taken on a life of its own, and Frank will say some words here in a moment. But what amazed me was throughout this journey, how many people said, wow, that's a great idea. Everybody loves Anne Frank and loves what that symbol is, her symbolism of optimism and hope and the belief in the good in people. And we've run into many people who have just hooked on to that. So at this moment, I'd like to call upon Whistler Osterfeld to come up. So we had a gentleman, Garth Ukranitz, who called us after one of the promotions we had done and said, I want to write a poem about Anne Frank. Whistler. So Whistler Garth couldn't be with us today, but Whistler is a neighbor of Garth's. And Garth thought that Whistler would be perfect because he is the same age as Anne was when 1944. So, Whistler, you're going to do the honors of reading the poem. The poem is called Princess Anne.
Thank you. Princess Anne by Garth Paul Ukrainets, Poet Laureate of the Black Mud Creek. Princess Anne, Princess Anne, the kingdoms are fiercely fighting, in the thunder and the lightning. There was nothing you could do. In the Netherlands you hide. Hush, the sound of people talking. Nazi boots around are walking. They are searching there for you. Princess Anne, Princess Anne. In the window your reflection, keeping watch with introspection. Looking down from deep inside, with your diary in your hand, little worn-out colored pencils, seeking truth without the stencils. Through your pen, your soul confides. Princess Anne, Princess Anne. A time to give, a time for keeping. A time to laugh, a time for weeping. A time for waiting out the war. In the streets of Amsterdam, the Canadians are coming. You can feel their distant drumming. It is you they are fighting for. Princess Anne, Princess Anne, bundled up with contradictions, writing heart-filled compositions. Through the bindings, there's a door. With concentration in your eyes, aspirations turn to vapor. As your tears drop onto paper, there is nothing you want more. Princess Anne, Princess Anne. In your dreams of flowing fountain, you're a pen on tip of mountain. In a kingdom full of grace, with a noble royal heart, a humble loaf without the leaven, a time for earth, a time for heaven. No more hiding in this place.
Well done, Whistler. Goed gedaan. Goed gedaan.
Well done, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So at this point, I'd like to have Frank Stolk. Okay. Frank?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is indeed Frank Stolk. I'm the president of the Dutch Canadian Club here in Edmonton. And John said to thank his wife for the tremendous amount of time that it took to do this. And I promised my wife, don't take any more phone calls for John for a while. It is an honor for me to welcome our distinguished guest, Honorable Jason Kenney, Premier of Alberta, City Edmonton Councillor Ben Henderson and John Duzek, Honor Heather Macpherson of Edmonton Strathcona, Jerry Bauma, the Honorary Consul of the Netherlands. But most of all, you are citizens. After all, you are the mosaic of this beautiful country we call Canada. I had hoped that in this little time, that you had enough time to read our agenda, because there's quite a few intricate details in it, what we are talking about Anne Frank and other stuff today. It is no secret that the friendship between the Netherlands and Canada goes back a very long time, 76 years as a matter of fact. The bond formed between those great nations is a bond of mutual respect for freedom of all mankind. We, the people of Dutch descent here in Edmonton and citizens in the Netherlands, are forever grateful for the Canadian men and women who just unwavering goal was to drive out the brutal Nazi regime from the face of the planet. Members of the 4th Canadian Armoured Division, including the Southern Alberta Light Horse, the SAL, were an integral part of the Allied forces to gain access to the Scheldt River. This is one of the major rivers coming out of the city of Antwerp, so the Allied troops could push through. One of the heavy battles was liberated the town of Steenbergen and a small town right beside Welberg, where we got the original bell from. 45,000 Canadians died in the liberation of Europe. We cannot ever repay these brave men and women for the sacrifices, but we can, and we will never and forever remember. On May the 4th, the Netherlands at 8 p.m. hold a 2-minute silence. Trains, cars, taxis, people on bicycles, on the sidewalk, in the middle of the road, stop to pay homage to this beautiful gift that we received. In so sincere hope, with our gift of this little bronze statue that we're going to unveil in a minute. This statue cast from an original mold by the original famous Dutch sculptor Pieter de Jonte, made for the first time in 1960, and now recasted by his son Sebastian, of a little girl of the name Anne Frank. Known from her incredible diary, translated in 70 languages and over 40 million copies sold around the world here in Lighthorse Park. Anne Frank's memorial statue unveiling. That was my first page. Everlasting, this part, it will be served as an everlasting reminder for all of us that however dark our future in these trying times we are in now, must never lose hope on the goodness of mankind and defend our hard-fought freedoms and liberties for the democracy of us all. That those who will come by in this park can pause for a moment to reflect in a time and think about their own problems and put them in perspective to the time of Anne Frank and get a feeling within, my problems can be solved. The world needs to stand on guard for thee. Thank you.
Now I'd like to call up Honorary Colonel Ralph Young, South Alberta Lighthorse.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Frank. Frank, those were wonderful words spoken on behalf of the Dutch community and our wonderful Canadian communities. Premier Kenny, Reverend Key, and Pastor Thomas, and special guests all. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be here to represent the South Alberta Lighthorse Regiment, its association and its foundation, and all those currently serving in our regiment and those who have served in the past. This is a very special occasion to honor Anne Frank and the special liberation project that was initiated by the Dutch community. As indicated, it's been 76 years since Canadians and Allied forces liberated the Netherlands. Our city and our regiment have special Dutch ties, highlighted by our twin city relationship with Bergen-op Zoom in Holland, and also with the regimental honor of receiving the freedom of the city from Bergen-op Zoom in 2019. Lighthorse Park is a most appropriate location to honor the life and horror and legacy of Anne Frank for her writings of the horror of war, but also the triumph of the human spirit. I wish to thank and honor all those involved in imagining and implementing this iconic image of Anne and in remembrance of her tremendous contributions. The Dutch Canadian Club with John and Frank and all those others who have been involved, the Lighthorse Park leaders, Troy Steele, Stix Gallard, Greg Yanda, and many others, and the many donors and supporters. So I just want to wish all of you congratulations and thank you for the tremendous efforts.
Thank you, Ralph. It's always a treat. And Ralph brought his grandson. Where is his grandson? There he is. We said it's a family affair. Now I'd like to call upon Stephen Schaffer. Stephen is president of the Jewish Federation of Edmonton. And I'd like to acknowledge them as well. As I started on this journey, we sort of reached out to different communities, and Steve, your community bang on. Also, before you start, I forgot to mention, but I see that Kim Kershell is here. Kim? And we always want to be thanking those people who are running, because it's important, because if they run, we don't have to. So keep that in mind. So I always say thank you for running. Anyways, Stephen, the podium is yours, and take it away.
Premier Kenny, honored guests, thank you for today. We are honored to be a part of today's historic event. Thank you to John Stobbe and the Dutch Canadian Club Edmonton for your hard work and perseverance that went into everything that results in today's ceremony. The unveiling of the Anne Frank statue here in Edmonton shall serve as a symbol for everyone, a symbol of many things. A symbol of the Canadian liberation of the Netherlands in World War II, a symbol of the relationship between Canada and the Netherlands. But it also serves as a reminder that we shall never forget the atrocities of Nazi Germany. We can never forget the genocide of the Jewish people in the Holocaust. Anne Frank's statue shall serve as a reminder that anti-Semitism and racism have no place in our society. It shall serve to educate us all that Canadian values stand against intolerance. This unveiling comes at an important time in our history. Jews remain the #1 target of hate-motivated attacks, according to Statistics Canada. Just this year, we've seen numerous attacks against Jews throughout the country, including here in Edmonton. Many Jews in Edmonton will not only see the Anne Frank statue as a recognition of the Holocaust and the horrible crimes committed against the Jewish people, but also as a symbol of hope of a brave girl who never stopped thinking the best of people, despite the hatred she was hiding from and the hatred that led to her murder. On a personal note, I feel deeply connected to Anne Frank. I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors on my father's side. My grandfather was in Auschwitz at the same time Anne Frank was there, and by luck, was able to survive and build a life here in Canada. I'm also the grandson of a captain of the Royal Canadian Artillery who served in part in the Netherlands during World War II. Further, as the father of 2 young Jewish girls, Anne Frank's life journey is one that affects my view of a better society that my children can grow up in, one where we can truly say never again and mean it. In her diary, Anne Frank said, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. The Torah, the Old Testament, says, Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, which means you shall love your fellow man as you love yourself. Let's let that be Anne Frank's legacy, and let this statue remind us of that. As we unveil the statue today, I hope that Anne Frank's quote can serve as a reminder to all Edmontonians that regardless of our beliefs, our sexual orientation, or the color of our skin, we should treat each other with mutual respect. We can all live with the hope of Anne Frank's inspiration that all our children can flourish in a world free from discrimination, in a society where everyone is treated equally and with kindness and tolerance for all." Thank you.
Thank you, and again, thank you to the Jewish community. Your support of me and this project is awesome, awesome, awesome. So now I'd like to call upon Rebecca Lapa, Amelia Chan, and Josie Thompson. Rebecca, after one of the articles with Nick Lees, reached out to me and says, "I saw the story about the statue. I'd like to write a song." And so I do what I do, and I put a package together, put a binder, and sent it off to Rebecca. And she wrote an incredible song that she is going to perform for us with Amelia and Josie.
Yeah, so the song is called Anne Frank's Secret Annex. in secret annex, she'd write away all her cares, detailing the life of the families there. Though Anne's young, she keeps the spirit bright, imagining the future while the bombs rain down at night. With just a fountain pen, she puts words to all the voices lost in the raging wind, blown away on the path to glory. And just like Anne, we won't give up. Her endless hope inspires us to dream. Trapped behind glass as her friends are carried away, and still find something to be thankful for each day. Birds in the sky, or the chestnut tree in bloom, writing every memory down to wipe away the gloom. With just a fountain pen, she puts words to all the voices lost in the raging wind, blown away on the path to glory. And just like Anne, we won't give up. Her endless hope inspires us to dream. Anne's words are stronger than bullets and grenades. After the smoke clears, her heart still leads the way. With just a fountain pen, she puts words to all the voices lost in the raging wind, blown away, but for whose glory. With just a fountain pen, she puts words to all the voices lost in the raging wind, blown away, but there was no glory. And just like Anne, we won't give up. Her endless hope inspires us to dream. Legs on the floor and head in the clouds, she dreams.
Hello? Isn't that freaking amazing?
Thank you.
Rebecca, I want to thank you so very, very much for sharing your creativity with us and with this song. And we don't know what we're going to do with this song, but actually we've got the rights for it. And we're going to see something. I'm actually envisioning, if somebody knows Celine Dion, I think this would be perfect. So just keep that in mind. You know, you never know.
Yeah. It's also out on Spotify and iTunes for anybody who wants to donate money to the Dutch Club. All the proceeds are going to them. So.
And those proceeds, as they come in, will go towards education and all those kind of things related to Anne Frank and that kind of thing. So here we are. We're on a bit of a timeline. It's right 1:30. I'm with our friends in Holland. Alles goed? Okay, so they're in Steinbergen. They're at their bell, and they're okay. So Angelo, who's over there, and I don't know how to. Oh, it started. So for the next 2 minutes, this will be the joint ringing of our bells. You're on. I think brilliant. I wish I could share with you what I'm seeing on my phone, but there's a crowd in Steinbergen at the bell. There's a Canadian and a Dutch flag, and as a tradition that they do on Christmas Eve, they've got candles and everything out there. It's just beautiful. Look at everybody here. There. Yeah, wave. Say, goeiedag. Come on, say, goeiedag. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, Holland, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. Hanneke, bedankt. We'll see you. Doei. Say doei. Doei. Okay. All right. Thank you for partaking in that. Just so you know, the bell, and I've got more copies of that. Thanks, Frank. This bell will be out again. We only bring it out for special occasions. So November 11th, it will be here, and that'll be in another monumental moment. So now I'd like to, this project was made possible because we had support from all over. And I want to just sort of quickly say thank you. We always talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a community to make these things happen. And we were so blessed and honored throughout this journey to have so many different groups help us, not only with money, but with doing things for the project. Just yesterday, some local people in the community, Cindy from the South Alberta Lighthorse, Rinska and her husband from the Dutch Club, and Ann Matheson from my community here in Old Strathcona, they're all like, we got to clean up this flower bed. And if you were here about 6 weeks ago, it was full of these poppies, and these poppies were grown, and they are seeds from Flanders Field. We ran into a little bit, there's a rabbit that lives here, and it was a dry season, but hopefully next year when we come back, we'll see a bunch more Flanders Field poppies, as well as it's our intention to engage the school kids, and I see Niles from the Academy over at King Edward, that we're going to be planting some tulips around the base of the statue this fall. So hopefully next spring we'll be full of tulips. So at this point, so this project is because it takes a community to make things happen. We were blessed. We got the city of Steinbergen sent us 2,500 euro. Works out to be about 3,800 Canadian. Huge. And we had people send us $20, and we had people send us $75. It was just amazing, and money came from here and there, and we had gifts in kind. Edmonton Granite Memorial has done the plinth. We got the T-shirts donated, on and on and on. So, but we also had support in different levels from all three levels of government. So for that, we are very grateful, and I'd like to now call upon Honorable Jason Kenney, Premier of the Province of Alberta, to say a couple words.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you all. What a magnificent day, and what a beautiful tribute, both to Anne Frank, to those whose lives were taken in the Holocaust, but also to the Canadian Armed Forces who liberated them. Reverend clergy, distinguished guests, members of Her Majesty's Canadian Armed Forces, thank you so much to everyone who has contributed to the arrival of this beautiful day. Congratulations to the South Alberta Light Horse Regiment Foundation and to the Light Horse Park for your renovation, which is culminated today. And Colonel Young, I think it's brilliant that you've entered into this partnership with the Dutch community, because now you're going to have the cleanest park and the best gardening anywhere. We just heard John detailing some of that, and I think it's a beautiful partnership. I see that you have a magnificent crest of Alberta that's embedded in the heart of the renovated park, which is a beautiful tribute to our province. Thank you for that, and congratulations to all who have contributed to the renovation of this park and historic part of our capital city. And thank you to the Dutch-Canadian Club in Edmonton, to the Anne Frank Memorial Statue Committee, and again to the South Alberta Light Horse Regiment Foundation for your collaboration, to all of the donors and volunteers who have made this possible. I think this is just a perfect vision to have located the Anne Frank statue here in the Light Horse Park. You know, this is about memory. The memorial to the veterans and fallen of this regiment, facing the statue of a girl who in many ways symbolizes the greatest crime in human history, the Shoah. And it calls to mind the words of Elie Wiesel when he received the Nobel Peace Prize. He said that remembering is a noble and necessary act. The call to memory reaches us from the very dawn of history. No commandment figures so frequently, so insistently in the Bible. It is incumbent upon us to remember the good we have received and the evil that we have suffered. And the Czech novelist Milan Kundera famously wrote that the struggle of freedom against tyranny is the struggle of memory against forgetting. So in this park and with this monument, the Dutch-Canadian community is teaching us all about the importance of memory, of struggling against tyranny through remembering, as Wiesel said, both the good that we have received and the evil that we have suffered. Anne Frank herself, of course, famously wrote that where there's hope, there's life. It fills us with fresh courage and makes us strong again. And all of this comes together in the historical threads that weave Canada and the Netherlands together. As John mentioned, the Franks were taken prisoner by the Gestapo in August of 1944. And just 1 month later, the 1st Canadian Army entered the Netherlands to begin its liberation. How tragic that they could not be there just weeks earlier. And yet, those men, including members of the South Alberta Light Horse Regiment, fought to free families, to protect families like the Franks. And so they are joined together in memory. Just as the Dutch people honor the graves of Canadian troops who never came home, who remained behind in the graves in the Netherlands, so too we join with the people of Holland and the Jewish people in remembering the Shoah. So thank you for this beautiful gift. Thank you for this gift of memory, and may it be here to inspire generations to come, to understand that while evil exists, hope can overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'd like to share another quote. The world is too dangerous a place to live in, not because of the people who do evil, because of the people who sit and let it happen. Written by Albert Einstein, interestingly enough, and that quote is on Edmonton's Holocaust Memorial, which is over at the legislature. I ran by it this morning and was inspired and wanted to share that with you because it is important that we all speak up. I'd now like to call upon our reps from the city, Councillor Ben Henderson, John Duzek, to come on up. And I want to acknowledge one of the toughest things for city staff is when us taxpayers call up and say, hey, I've got an idea. And I want you to go back and specifically let Anton Gulko and Susan Dack, who are our first staff after talking with Rogers Smythe about this project and all of the work that they did to try and not make it happen, but actually in the end they were very instrumental in making it all happen. So Councillor Henderson are you both coming up, or you both deserve to? You guys worked hard.
Well, Thanks, John. And I, first off, on behalf of the city, a huge thank you to John and to the Dutch community for making this happen. John, as many of you will know, was a very hard man to say no to. I know that not just from this experience, from previous experiences with him. There's so many things in this city have happened because of his determination, and this is certainly one of them. So thank you, John, and thank you for everybody who made that happen. On behalf of the mayor, on behalf of council, I want to bring greetings and congratulations for everybody who's worked on this to make this happen. I wanted to take this opportunity, though, and one of the reasons I was really excited to get this invitation is because Anne Frank had a pretty profound effect upon me as a young man for a number of reasons. And I just wanted to tell that story because it's something that has lived with me for most of my life. I was cast as Otto Frank when I was in high school in the Diary of Anne Frank, which is when I first really bumped into the story in a really, truly meaningful way. And I think first and foremost what I learned about that as a high school student, as a young man, that so much of her story is about youth and so much of her story is about hope. And that was tied into something that I discovered that probably is even more personal to me when I was doing my work on that show, is that Otto Frank left Germany in 1932 with his young family, including a young daughter, at the same time as my grandfather left Germany in 1932 with a young daughter who is my mother. And the only difference really was that there was an English Channel between my mother and my parents and where Anne and her family ended up. And if it had not been for that luck and that fate, you could very well have a son or a daughter of Anne standing in front of you now. And that meant a great deal to me. I think ultimately, we've heard about this, the talk of hope here today, which I think she embodied. I think we've heard about the talk of youth, which I think is even more what she embodied. I'm really encouraged to see the young people in the crowd today because that's when I was deeply affected by this story, was when I was their age. And I think it's particularly important now because it worries me that we're going back into a period where hatred of the other is raising its ugly head in our society again. And we cannot let that happen. And all the young men and women who were part of the troops, who went thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away to stop that evil from spreading, which allowed the situation that means that I can be here today because that evil did not spread across the English Channel. I think this is, I hope, a story forward for them, from them, to the next generation who will make sure that this kind of thing never happens again. And I also, on behalf of the city, have a profound gratitude to the Dutch community who have become so much part of who we are. And in particular, knowing Anne's story, to the remarkable courage of the Dutch people who protected her and almost saved her and her family. So on behalf of the city, on behalf of everybody, I am so excited and pleased to see this year. I think there's a wonderful, wonderful confluence of this new park, which I know has also been a real labor of love in order to get it happening and has been long overdue, which we'll get to celebrate properly on October 2nd. And bringing Anne's statue here, I think it's a really, really good connection. I think it's a wonderful connection that can celebrate the Dutch community, the Canadian community, and all those people that have allowed us the kind of freedoms that we still have and have allowed me to be able to stand here on this stage and bring you greetings. So on behalf of the City of Edmonton, thank you very much. And I would like to introduce my colleague, John Zadek, who actually did a lot of work on helping make this project happen and wanted to say a few words.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Thank you very much. This is a beautiful event, and this is what this city needs right now. Lighthorse Park tells an important story. It's a story of sacrifice and war, but it's also a story of peace and safety. It's a story relevant to every generation living today, and a story that needs to be passed on along from generation to generation. Here we are 76 years after the liberation of the Netherlands, and we have our amazing local connection here. Thank you to the Southern Alberta Lighthorse, the the Dutch-Canadian Club, and everyone that helped make this possible. I am a city councilor, but I'm also a member of the Military Reserve. I believe that this story that we're talking about needs to be told. Today we are talking about the Canadian, Jewish, and Dutch story. But as a city councilor, I'm grateful that there are groups and citizens who believe in this, how important this is to ensure that this story is honored and recognized. Statues are important, and Frank is important. This tribute sends a message of gratitude from the Dutch Canadians, from Edmontonians to the veterans who served, and to the over 100,000 Canadians who were either killed or wounded in World War II. This site, in this beautiful park, in this vibrant neighborhood, is a reminder that everyone lives and the gift of freedom is still alive. As we emerge from our pandemic and Frank's presence in this park where we can live out our lives and gather here freely, is a poignant reminder to read her diary, to learn our history and to pause and remember the sacrifices of the past and to live in gratitude for each day. And I'll close with speaking of Anne Frank's diary. I'm a bit of a World War II buff, and I've read textbooks and I've read other books, but it was really when I read that diary for the first time years ago that it really hit home how important and tragic those events were. Thank you for having me here. Thanks to John Stobie, and thank you, Councillor Henderson. Great event.
Ben, I am also a resident of Old Strathcona, formerly known as Ward 8. We'd like to thank you for your many years of service on our behalf and enjoy what life will bring for you next. John, good luck on your campaign as it comes in. I think you'll be okay. I see we have also another guest, and again, my theme of recognizing those who run for office so I don't have to. Cheryl Watson is here with us in the audience with her lovely husband, who's got a most awesome vest, orange, of course. Cheryl is over there. Everybody, just again, Cheryl, thanks to you and your family for making that commitment. Everybody, let's get ready to vote. John was talking about the Diary of Anne Frank. This is the cover here. This is the official book, according to the people in Basel, Switzerland, who own the rights to the book. They're very clear. At this point, I'd like to call upon the Honourable Heather Macpherson, our MP for Edmonton, Strathcona, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor. It's so lovely to be here. And as I was watching the celebration today and listening to all the speakers, one of the things that really touched me this afternoon is that we had young people sharing their poetry and sharing their music with us today. And that's what makes these memorials so important. It's when young people are part of this, when this becomes something that is part of our present, part of our community now, and we can tell that there is a life for this memorial, there is a life for these memories in the young people that come forward with such beautiful contributions. So thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. Like so many Canadians, World War II and the Holocaust is cemented in my consciousness because of Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl. I grew up with stories of my grandfather's exploits in the war. He was a gunner with the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he was shot down over Belgium, and he narrowly escaped capture, and took many years to come back to my grandmother and my young mother. But it wasn't till I read Anne Frank's diary that I felt viscerally the reality of war and the reality of genocide. And I know that I'm not alone. We've heard that from other speakers today. Millions of people have read Anne Frank's diary and been inspired. Nelson Mandela read Anne Frank's diary while in prison in South Africa, and he said that reading the diary had given him hope. I read Anne's diary as a child, and it moved me in a way that is difficult to describe. I can only say that I knew that when I read that diary that I must do something to make the world better. That we all have a role in making the world a better place. I'm very privileged and very honored that I now sit on the International Human Rights Subcommittee within the House of Commons. And it gives me an opportunity to try to do something to make the world a better place. And I have to tell you, it is difficult. It is difficult work. Canadians joined with the world to proclaim never again after World War II. But we know that never again has happened again and again. Right now, too many places in our world have states which are committing genocide against their citizens, committing genocide against children like Anne. It's too easy to turn away. It's too easy to forget. It's remarkable that a 13-year-old girl, a 13-year-old Dutch girl, this beautiful Jewish child, has made it impossible for us to turn away, impossible for us to forget. I want to thank John and the Dutch Canadian Club Edmonton and everyone else who had an important role in bringing us together today and in bringing this important reminder of Anne and her legacy to Edmonton. It's a tremendous accomplishment, and I can tell you I know exactly how much hard work went in because we communicated with John on a very regular basis. Thank you for all being here today. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this ceremony. And thank you for this powerful message that will serve to remind us for generations to come.
Thank you, thank you. I want to acknowledge that we did receive $30,000 from the Community Investment Program from the province of Alberta, and we also received $5,000 from Veterans Affairs. Those funds went towards the boards that we'll see later today, and we're excited about those. At this point, I would like to call upon Jerry Bauma, the Honorary Dutch Consul for Edmonton. Jerry?
Thanks, John. Honorable Premier, honorable guests, and peoples of Canada and of those of Dutch descent. First, I shall deliver a message from His Majesty King Willem-Alexander, King of Holland, House of Orange. This beautiful statue of Anne Frank has been donated with love by the Dutch community in Edmonton to the residents of the city and the Canadian military. It is an expression of friendship and one of gratitude. The warm bond between Canada and the Kingdom of the Netherlands lies in our common belief that human dignity is everlasting. Secondly, I want to read a letter from the ambassador from the Netherlands to Canada, the Honorable Anne Koppelies. She was not able to be here today, but she writes, "I feel moved and honored to be addressing you through this letter today on the occasion of the unveiling of the Anne Frank statue in Edmonton. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all who have contributed to making this statue possible. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge John Stobie, Frank Stolk, who have both worked tirelessly on this project, as well as our honorary consul, Jerry Bauma. Anne Frank's diary reminds us that liberty, democracy, and peaceful living together are values that we have to fight for. Anne reveals her fears and anxieties in her writing, and I quote, "At night in bed, I see myself alone in a dungeon without father and mother, or I'm roaming the streets, or the annex is on fire, or they come in the middle of the night to take us away, and I crawl under my bed in desperation. I see everything as if it were actually taking place, and to think it might all happen soon. I simply can't imagine that the war will end and life will ever be normal again. I do talk about after the war, but it's as if I were talking about a castle in the air, something that can never come true. End of quote. We are incredibly fortunate to be able to live in this castle in the air today, in part thanks to the sacrifice of the many Canadian soldiers who liberated the Netherlands from Nazi occupation over 75 years ago. These sacrifices, a shared value of freedom for all people, and commitment to upholding the rule of law is the foundation of the enduring friendship between Canada and the Netherlands. It is my hope that this statue of Anne in the streets of Edmonton will help us remember that it is our collective responsibility to remain vigilant against threats to freedom and justice for everyone, and prompt us never to forget the atrocities of the Holocaust. Please accept my congratulations on the unveiling of this incredibly important statue. I look forward to visiting this likeness of Anne Frank very soon. So finally, a couple personal comments. As we reflect on this event, the liberation, this commemorative statue, and this young woman, it's easy for us, especially for those who were born after these events happened and in places far away, to view these events in a somewhat clinical or matter-of-fact manner. But let me put this in a more personal context. First, the Dutch people, who to this day ask this question: why did these young men, boys, from this place far away, Canada, come here to liberate us from our neighbors? Second, the Canadian soldiers, when experiencing the unrestrained joy of the liberated Dutch people, asked the question, why are these people so happy, so appreciative? We're only doing what is right, our jobs. Little did they know, or did the world know, about the darkness and the brutality of the Nazi regime. And finally, Anne herself, born in 1929, the same year my parents were born, who were liberated by those Canadians that came a few months too late for Anne. They would have been playmates had they grown up in the same neighborhood. Anne did not want to be here. She did not want to have statues built in her name, or songs written about her, or poetry. She wanted simply to live a life in freedom, and be completely unknown if that is what life would have brought her. But she met another fate, a fate driven by an evil force that now serves as a reminder how easily these forces can rise again. And I will end with this quote from Edmund Burke: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing." So today, let us commemorate the triumph of good people over evil, both the Canadians as liberators, the Dutch as the liberator, and the everlasting courage in the words of a good, good young girl, Anne Frank.
Thank you very much. And it is exciting that we have people around the world that are watching what we're doing. Now, those are nice glass covers. I forgot to share with everybody, this is the CD. Remember when we used of Rebecca's song? And I'm looking forward to what we're going to do with it. And again, it is launched today on Spotify and iTunes. Got it? Yeah, there we go. Great. So we're getting ready and coming along. I'd like to now call upon the Reverend Daniel Key from Holy Trinity Anglican Church and Pastor Aaron Thomas from Trinity Lutheran Church to do a blessing.
I'd like to start by saying thank you on behalf of Holy Trinity Anglican Church, which is actually the regimental church of our Sally Horse troops, and a big thank you on behalf of Trinity Lutheran, in which Pastor Aaron is one of the pastors. We thank you for the tremendous honor it is to be able to bestow this blessing upon this amazingly beautiful statue. With that said, let us pray. Lord, we bless you, for you alone are holy, and because in your compassion for your beloveds, you sent into the world your Son, Jesus Christ, the author and perfecter of holiness.
Jesus sent the Spirit to sustain the newborn church, a voice that teaches us the secrets of kindness, a breeze that strengthens and refreshes, a fire that sears our hearts in love, the seed of God that yields a harvest of bountiful grace.
Today, we praise you for the gifts of the Spirit bestowed on Anne Frank, in whose image this statue contains. May we follow in the footsteps of Anne, remembering that words are stronger than bullets and grenades, remembering how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world, that no one has ever become poor by giving, and to live in a manner in which we don't think of all the misery, but instead we think of all the beauty that still remains here on earth.
We therefore bless this statue in your name, that it shall be a place where people can come, reflect, remember, and listen to your voice, and the voice that Anne professed, a voice of peace, a voice of love, a voice of charity, and a voice of grace. In the name of the Creator, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, be all honor and glory, world without end. Amen.
Is it appropriate to say excellent? But that was, thank you so much. Exactly what we were hoping for, because this is a community event for all of us. Wow, are we getting to this moment, Frank? Frank and I have been sort of toe-to-toe, hip-to-hip. I would normally write emails late at night, write emails in the morning and make sure they all sent at about 8 o'clock. And Frank would be quick to respond. So Frank, this has been a wonderful journey. I've been honored to represent the Dutch Club and work on this project. It's been tremendous fun working with you. The Dutch community, I want to thank you for letting me sort of take you on this journey and watching my emails and stuff. When Frank said, hey, have you got an idea? And I said, yep, I've been waiting for that question. For those of you over in the Holland that are going to be watching this YouTube, you fill a large part of my heart and our family. While I'm Canadian, I am of Dutch roots, and we have lots of connections there back and forth. Sebastian De Jonte, I just want to really acknowledge him. He is Peter De Jonte's son and has sort of the responsibility, which must be huge. So Peter De Jonte was a artist in residence for the city of Utrecht. So basically, he was hired to just make art. And I am a big fan of public art. We need to have more of it. So I'm honored to be part of this project, and bring another piece. Frank, or Ralph, you and I have some work to talk about public art. But when I phoned him, so the sort of first call went, Frank says, hey, have you got an idea? We want to do something for the 75th. I said, yeah, I have one. I've been holding it. I ran into the artist's son. They still have the mold. We could do Anne Frank. He said, yeah, that's a great idea. And then for about a month, I was trying to figure out how I'd gather up who do you call, what do you say, and stuff. Because I had run into Sebastian on an open museum day when Avery and I and Spencer and Fia were in the Netherlands in 2017. And we ran by the studio, or the atelier where he is. And they had this, what we call white Anne Frank. And we'd seen it, and I asked him, oh, is that the Anne Frank? He says, yeah, and we still have the mold. So October of 2019, a neighbor of mine, Brian Stonehawker, I don't know if you're here, Brian, he also a big fan of art, said, just phone him. So Google, Facebook, get a phone the number. It's Sebastian's daughter. She says, you need to talk to my dad. Here's his number. So out of the blue, hi, it's John Stobie from Edmonton. I'm with the Dutch Canadian Club here, and we're doing a project for the 75th anniversary. I know you still have the mold. We'd like to get a copy of the Anne Frank statue. Well, without hesitation, Sebastian said, yeah, I'm in, and let's do it. And so there started the Dutch Club's journey here in Edmonton. We needed to figure out how to bring a statue here. We needed to figure out how much it would cost. We needed to do a bunch of things. And today is the day that we've got it all done, and we can share it with you. Beside the statue, I just want to acknowledge we have 2 educational plaques, and one of the objectives of the South Alberta Light Horse, Troy and Styx and the whole team, is to continue to tell stories and educate people. So through the support that we received from Veterans Affairs, who sent a lovely letter that I forgot this morning, so Heather, cover for me, please. John was great. But we were able to produce these pieces. We produce them, traditionally when you think of World War II, you think of black and white, but there are a couple color moments. So one of the plaques is talking about the love between the Netherlands and Canada, and the other one is about Anne Frank and the history and the connection of that. So at this point, I'd like to call up Jenny Smits and Rinska Terheide from the Dutch Canadian Club to unveil the 2 educational plaques, which, again, Friday was a busy day in the park. The city staff were cleaning, the crews were finishing, and we were getting things installed. So these plaques, if you could, and these, we're not going to reuse them, so you can tear them however you like. And they are just lovely. The posts were donated by a company called Forge 53 that are local boys, my son's age, that made the stands. And then another local company, Cowan Graphics. This is a new process that they're doing. So it's a very thin metal that will be last a long time and is known to survive quite well in the Florida sun, which today we've got lots of sunlight. So thank you, ladies, and thanks to everybody at the Dutch Club. On Thursday or Wednesday, I think Thursday morning, Wednesday morning, I took the statue from the Dutch Club over to Edmonton Granite Memorial. And Paul, are you here in the crowd? Paul and his team over at Edmonton Granite donated the plinth. And on the plinth, you'll see a couple things. One, Anne Frank, of course, at the front. And again, this statue is... the original of this statue is in the city of Utrecht, and we tried to honor that as best we could. And I know that Sebastian has commented to me that he's just very touched that we have, so the font at the front is as close as we could get to the font on the plinth in the Utrecht. And the back, you'll see these pins here. This is the Dutch, as we have Remembrance Day, the Dutch have something called May 4 and 5, and that's their sort of the day that they were liberated, and then they celebrate. And we didn't know what to do because we couldn't put everybody because we had so many donators. So we put the emblem, which is a flame with a dove. So it's still here it is, on the back, and we had that engraved, and we've called this a community project of the Dutch Canadian Club here in Edmonton. So at this point, this is the drum roll moment. So we are here in the park because of the South Alberta Light Horse, and we thought this would be most appropriate. This is your park, and we want to thank you for letting us come in. So I'd like to call upon Lieutenant Troy Steele, Lieutenant Colonel Troy Steele, and RSM, LF, Stephen Styx Gallard, to do the unofficial unveiling. And before you do that, this little piece of cloth, the Dutch, so as I'm picking up the statue, I'm taking it over to Edmonton Granite. There's a group in the boardroom at the Dutch Club sewing this piece together to make sure it's all ready. So I've never unveiled a statue. I don't know how we're going to do this properly, but Edmonton, I'd like you to give a round of applause and welcome Anne Frank. Wow. It's a bit emotional. So in Utrecht, this statue is in a place called the Janse Kerkhof, and every week there's a flower market there. And if you take a look at pictures, and when you look at the educational sign, you'll see one. So they put flowers by it, and so we thought we would need to start it up here, a new tradition here in Edmonton. So at this point, I'd like to call upon my wife, Avery, my lovely aunt, Florence, and Marlies Brand to come up and lay the first flowers. Come on up, girls. Marlies is a great family friend. She and her husband, Hans, are here emigrated from Germany. Florence and her husband, Jim, lived in Canmore, and they were longtime members of the Legion down there. And Avery, she puts up with me. And there you go. Time. So we've flew over 200 tulips, and we'd like everybody to have an opportunity that would like to take a tulip and lay it at the base of the statue, I guess, and welcome and take a look around. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you for your support. And all of the words today, we're all responsible to make sure that this is a safe place, something to call home, and let's do our part. Thank you, thank you. Tot ziens, tot de volgende keer. So feel free to put those tulips at the base. I think that's going to make a nice photo.